the big G. Now, many of you are sort of are familiar with this symbol, the square and compasses of the Masons, and at least in the United States, inside the square and compass is a giant G, and in other places too, but especially in the United States, Freemasonry, the G figures prominently. Now, we're told at different stages in our Masonic career what the G stands for or what the G represents. But we're never given a definitive, this means that. Always, this is the definition of that. And so it sort of leaves it as a mystery. Obviously, in English-speaking countries, you would think, well, I bet it means God. Well, yeah, and sometimes you see a Hebrew letter Yod in the middle of that. And Yod is the Hebrew equivalent of I or J or Y. And I've even had some of my elderly lodge brothers tell me, well, it's a Jud. It's a Hebrew Jud. And so that means God. Well, Yod could be a G, but it also is an English letter that represents about as much as possible the golden spiral, which is known sort of as the fingerprint of God. And from a very non-sectarian point of view, that'd be a pretty cool definition for it too. But it's sort of a limiting mechanism to define something so definitively. In other words, it's the difference between an emblem, say, an emblem stands for something. But a symbol is less defined. A symbol is a mystery. And there's always something behind it. It's a jumping off point to an infinite number of ways your mind can go with a symbol. And so symbols are never defined. If you define a symbol, it stops being a symbol. You pull away the limitless potentiality of concepts that a symbol can trigger. You're limiting it, you're stifling it, you're nailing it down. I'm going to talk about that G in reference to the G standing for the God or the divinity of your choice. And for a magician who is, for the last couple thousand years, has been used to seeing the magical universe as a situation where the magician is given magical power from a deity, like Solomon. Solomon had to mind meld with God in order to do his magic, and that's the foundation of Solomonic magic, or anything that where you appeal to the higher power to do stuff, and it sort of puts you in the position of saying, well, I'm powerless, but something other than me is giving me this power. And not that that's an unworkable system. But it is not really the most expanded view of what that power is. But more importantly, it's a very limited point of view of where you are, who you are, what you are. So I was talking in terms of high magic and low magic and how people have sort of differentiated the ideas between high and low magic. There are those who define low magic as being things nature-based or outdoor magic, as opposed to ceremonial magic, a la the rituals of the Golden Dawn or Aleister Crowley, indoor magic. Here the terms high and low are diplomatically construed by both schools as being morally neutral, the two merely differing in character and application and appealing to different spiritual personalities and tastes. Here both the high and low magician are relatively happy in their own worlds, performing their own brands of magic. And this is what I really want to talk about. There are others who define the highness and lowness of magic that ways that go way beyond discussing the difference between working in a lodge room, temple, or outside in a grove. For these people, high magic refers to a formal process of effecting change in one's environment by enlisting the aid of God and a heavenly hierarchy of good archangels, angels, intelligences, and spirits. And low magic refers to a formal process of effecting change by enlisting the aid of the devil or devils, fallen angels, or infernal evil spirits and demons. Obviously, in order to seriously consider the virtues of this perspective, a person must first be committed to a very particular, some might say draconian, view of spiritual reality. One that is supported, or so the argument goes, by scriptures and doctrines of the Christian, Muslim, or Jewish religions. For convenience sake, I will henceforth collectively and respectfully refer to these Bible-based religions by a term I coined just for conversations such as this. The word is Chrislmu. One popular interpretation of these doctrines posits that humans are caught in the middle of a perpetual war between the armies of an absolutely good God in heaven above and the minions of an absolutely evil devil in hell below. For reasons known only to God, the devil and his team have been placed in charge of human life on earth. Furthermore, according to this theory, God has especially charged the devil with the duty of tempting and tormenting human beings, perpetually prodding us to rebel against a curious, complex catalog of commandments and divinely decreed roster of rules, irrational beliefs, and blindly obedient behavior that, if we follow the program faithfully, might earn for us after death a ticket to eternal happiness in heaven with God and his good angels. This parochial and highly polarized way of looking at things makes everything pretty simple. God is good, the devil is bad. Angels are good, demons are bad. Heavenly stuff is high, infernal stuff is low. For those of us who subscribe to the Chrislemu worldview, the choice of whether to pursue the path of high or low magic is a no-brainer. After all, who in their right mind would prefer to dabble with dangerous and deceitful evil demons from hell, when instead one can safely seek the heavenly aid of the wholesome and well-behaved good angels of God Almighty? From his high horse of spiritual piety, the high magician looks down upon low magicians who, in order to accomplish their nefarious ends, stand ready and willing to proffer their reprobate souls to the evil spirits in exchange for the fleeting power to be naughty, to harm an enemy, bewitch a neighbor's cow, or bed an otherwise unwilling partner. There are many people in the world today, magicians and non-magicians alike, who believe quite literally that the above arrangement is the only spiritual game plan in town. I remember once I was speaking at a sort of a esoteric convention of some kind. And this is early on, and I was talking about Enochian magic, I think. And one very smug woman in the front row, it was in a large, hall-like convention center, many, many stories high kind of thing. High enough for if a bird got in, it could fly around for years. But anyway, one woman in the front row interrupt me because I said something about how neutral and unevil this stuff was, and she made a comment to the effect of that it can't be neutral. It's either God, it's either of God or it's of the devil. And obviously I was from the devil. And before I had a chance to respond, one of those birds that got into the hall flew into like a second store fold-out window it flew into the window and fell unconscious at my feet. And she said, "It's either God or the devil, and obviously you're from the devil." And then a bird drops like it's dead right at my feet, and everybody goes, "Oh." It got up. It wasn't dead. Anyway, it was very well timed, but I digress. A lot of people think that this duality thing is the only spiritual game plan in town. It is certainly their right to do so. After all, for many of us, this God-devil, heaven-hell, angel-demon morality play is the familiar foundation upon which the perversely comfortable faith of our fathers was built. Well, I certainly do not wish to offend anyone's sincere spiritual beliefs, and I hold up my hand and swear some of my best friends are Chrislemus. I must, however, be honest. I do not believe in such an all-good anthropomorphic God. Neither do I believe in an all-evil anthropomorphic devil. I don't believe in a heaven where I'll be rewarded for believing correctly, or a hell where I'll be punished for my unbelief. In fact, I believe there's something terribly wrong and spiritually toxic with this entire picture. Dangerously and tragically wrong. A wrongness that has plagued the Western psyche for millennia. Primitive and superstitious phantasm of the mind. A nightmare that has infected the human soul with the virus of fear and self-loathing. A cancerous curse that demands that every man, woman, and child surrender to the great lie that would make us believe that our very humanness makes us unclean and damned in the eyes of a wrathful deity. And I'll digress long enough to inject, and we can blame the Apostle Paul for a great responsibility for the Christian attitude of self-loathing. How do I feel about Paul? I'm sure he was. Yeah, I'm sure he was. Does my rejection of a too literal interpretation of scriptural worldview of the Crizzle Muse make me an atheist? For those who adhere too tightly to their doctrines, I guess it does. But it certainly does not from my point of view. I most ardently believe in, indeed I worship, a supreme consciousness that is the ultimate source of all manifest and unmanifest existence. I believe that you and I and every other monad of existence are components and reflections of the supreme consciousness. My morality, if you insist on calling it that, is based on my conviction that the ultimate nature of this super existence is transcendently good. A good we could never adequately define with our words or understand with our meat brains. A good so all-comprehensively infinite, there can be nothing outside of itself, not even nothing. There can be no opposite. There can be no opposite to this great good. The goodness of supreme existence is spelled with the largest possible G imaginable. I call it the great G. This great G swallows up the concept of duality. It neutralizes all concepts that remain so small that it's possible for them to have opposites. Ideas such as a God who is so small and incomplete that there is an outside of itself where a pesky devil can go running around causing trouble. Ideas such as darkness and light, little goods and little evils, little highs and little lows. Perhaps the brains of our ancestors were not developed enough to grasp the idea of the great goodness of supreme existence. After all, in the ages when the Crizzle Muse and proto-Crizzle Muse doctrines were invented, our minds whereas yet unexpanded and unburdened by the thoughts of gravity, or the speed of light, or the rotation of the earth, or its orbit of the sun, or black holes, or the nature of space-time. Perhaps back then it was impossible for us to wrap our minds around a reality that didn't spring solely from the primitive fear-based motivations of reward and punishment, pain and pleasure. Perhaps then, but not any longer. And that's where we'll end our little discussion about the great G. And for the modern magician that still operates and utilizes the Solomonic formula, the deity that the magician invokes is not the small little g deity of any particular religion, a god that's so small it would have an opposite that's evil, but the big G itself. The magician invokes by having his or her consciousness absorbed in this above the abyss reality where duality no longer exists. Yeah, and that's it for today. Until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself, be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.